Good afternoon, friends. My name is Suzanne McAllister. I am co-founder of the PAW Project, Post-Animal Use World Project, organizer with Vegan Spirituality Group of Philadelphia, and volunteer on the Legislative and Advocacy Committee for PA Voters for Animals. Today is May 19th, 2026, and I am really glad that I'm going to have an opportunity to introduce you to Rowan Murray. And I'm going to explain how we met, and then I'm going to ask Rowan a few questions. So Rowan and I met at a protest up at the Parks Casino Raceway, which is basically a casino, but they also have horse racing. And it was on the day of the Kentucky Derby, which is always the first Saturday in May. And it felt like a good way to spend some time that day, since horse racing is horrific, as are any of the things we do to exploit animals. But in any case, Rowan was there. We ended up standing next to each other and chatting. And I was really, really struck by many things that Rowan had to tell me about her journey to animal advocacy, and both personal and now professional. And so I asked her that day, would she be willing to have me interview her? And she agreed. So here we are. So welcome, Rowan. And I'll just add this before I ask my first question. I am always hopeful, and I didn't realize how young you are, but I could be your grandmother. So we're two generations apart. But when I see young people like you who are motivated and are doing what you're doing and really putting your heart and soul and energy into this work, because I'm at the tail end of my life and you're at the start of yours. So I find that very encouraging. In any case, I'd like you to maybe tell us a little bit about your background and how you got into advocacy, or I believe you're vegan, and so maybe you can tell us about that journey and the journey towards animal advocacy.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, thank you so much for all your kind words. And so I went vegan about a year and a half ago, when I was 18. And so basically what happened was my dog, she had cancer, and it was a long, drawn out process, and she was eventually put down. And for me, it ruined my life. She was my best friend in the entire world. I loved her so much. And
Mm.
the only thing that gave me that comfort was knowing that I gave her the best life I possibly could. And so I kind of just wanted that for all dogs. And I was just like, there's so many dogs just like her. I hope that they all have a great life. And then, as kind of silly as it sounds, like the next day I had bacon, and I was like, this was an animal, and I never really thought
Mm.
about that before. And I was like, okay, like let me see how it gets to our plate. And so I looked at some slaughterhouse videos, and I essentially went vegan overnight. And I mean, like, it was kind of a no-brainer once you see that stuff. And then I kind of realized, veganism isn't just a diet, it's about a lot of different things. And so once I started to see, like, it's everywhere, it's cosmetics, it's entertainment, it's all these animal tested products, I realized that just being vegan myself wasn't enough. And I really needed
Mm.
to pour myself into this and tackle kind of something that's so deeply ingrained into society. So from there, it's kind of an interesting story where I saw, like, a few months before I went vegan, my mom actually saw this big sign that said Parks Kills Horses, which is where we met at, and
Mm.
she was just like, "Oh yeah, there's this big protest at Parks Casino," and we've never seen a protest like ever in our town or anything. So I was like,
Mm.
that's crazy, you know? And then once I started looking into advocacy, I just looked up Park Skills Horses, and Revolution Philadelphia came up. And the next time I went to the next protest, and I actually held the exact same sign. And from there, I just met a bunch of people, and now I'm fully in the community. This is, what I want to dedicate my life to. And now I get paid for it. I joined PETA, and now I'm going to be doing a touring position there. So,
And can you tell us, well, first of all, before I ask you that question, I think your story is pretty unique. I don't know how much you have asked people when you're meeting them about their journeys, but that you made that connection from the day that you had to say goodbye to your dog and the next morning you're eating bacon is pretty dramatic and unusual. And something inside of you was ready. It sounds like you didn't even know it, but it happened. And you
uh,
listened.
yeah. hmm Like, I just never saw, like, meat and stuff as animals. I don't know why. Like, I know that sounds stupid now, but like it's just so it wasn't one thing that really like necessarily caused me to go vegan. It really just was that realization. So yeah, I don't know why it clicked for me, but I'm happy it did.
Well, and I think all of us have our stories. But like I said, and I've talked to lots and lots of people over the years, and um, to me, yours is pretty unique in how fast it was and how complete it was. And then, as you said, you realize, oh, being vegan isn't just about the food you're eating, it's about all these other things. And then you took action. Now, I do think part of that is youth, which there's energy and motivation, and maybe the path is a little bit cleaner, but like you said, you're glad, and I'm certainly glad. And I was so glad that I met you. I wanted to ask you about what you're going to be doing with PETA, but you also shared some things. If and I don't know how comfortable you feel about sharing it, and if you don't, that's absolutely fine. But in your personal life, some of the obstacles that you've had to experience as you have been on this journey for the last year and a half, if you feel like sharing it.
Yeah, there are some members of my family that aren't supportive in the slightest. Um, Yeah, I probably don't wanna get too much into it, but yeah, they're just not supportive. They don't think it's healthy. They don't think, it's even doing anything a lot. The thing with veganism is that every argument there's no true argument against veganism. So, it doesn't really bother me, but it is hard.
Mm-hmm.
It's hard not being able to necessarily eat dinner with the family and having to cook your own meals, or, just going to parties and not being able to eat anything. That can be hard, but
Yeah,
ultimately, like, as pretentious and stuff as it sounds, like, I always just put myself in the animal's position, and I know I'm doing the right thing, and I know that my life, like, I still get to eat, I still get to go to bed every night in my bed, and, like, the animals don't get that. So, it's really not, like it's not like you have to give up anything. It's not like it's a struggle. It's just, when you put things into perspective, it's not that big of a deal. It can just be a slight annoyance. And ultimately, I just wish that they would respect me because I want them to respect the animals. And, that's
I,
all that.
I love I love that message that you just said, which is it's really not that big a deal, and it's pretty easy. And I think the pushback, and I don't know whether you've gotten that, but I certainly have, is how hard it is to be vegan. And it really isn't. But part of the reason it isn't for you, and I think for many of us, is like you said, I wrote it down. There is no true argument against veganism. And then you also said, I get to eat I get to go to bed at night, and these animals do not. And that is such a strong motivation. And that you put yourself in the place of the animals, and that is what motivates you and drives you. And it's certainly true for me. But tell me about this work that you're going to start doing with PETA, or maybe you've already started, but I'm curious what that is, what you're going to be doing.
Yeah, so I started off with the youth advisory board where I would kind of just give input and go to meetings and kind of connect with people my age and kind of just try to push not push, but spread PETA for the youth and stuff. So from there, I applied for a position where so basically, I start June 7th, and I'm gonna be going on tour with like a bunch of bands, and you pretty much just
Wow.
do outreach. I'm going to every major city, and I've already done it kind of like a test run in Philadelphia, which is where I live, and it's pretty much just a concert where the bands want us to be there. The bands invited us, and then everybody in line will get talked to by me or the other person doing it. And so actually the one that I just did was a petition to ban the sale of live animals at PetSmart and Petco. And they actually took a bunch of species out of their store, so that was like kind of successful. And I don't
Where
know if
I'm curious, where was that? Was that in Philadelphia?
It was at Underground Arts in Philadelphia. It was a venue.
Okay.
Yeah, yeah,
Okay.
for Melrose Avenue, the band.
Okay. All right. Yeah. Um, well, I saw how you were when we were together, and how uh, you seem very at ease and comfortable just going up to people, going to put a flyer into a car window if they were willing to take it. And I really admired how willing you are to put yourself out there, because sometimes we can get nasty comments or pushback that is uncomfortable, but you seemed very at ease. So I can see why you are a really good fit for this role that PETA is hiring you for.
Thank you so
And
much.
so you, oh no, it was wonderful to watch you in action. I really, yeah, I admired that. So you're starting on June 7th, and is it like a limited position, or you're not sure how long it will last?
So it's gonna. So I'm gonna. The tour wraps up July 31st, and then I'll go back home. But the thing with PETA is that they want you, like passionate people, they want you to stay and stuff. So yeah, as long as I like doing this, I'll probably do another tour. And there's so many things to do for animals. There's so many jobs. I'm sure that I'll either just continue doing tours like this or do a remote position wherever they really need me. So. Yeah.
So I have one last question, which is when you're out advocating like you are at these concerts, and also at the protest I met you at, which was not directed at younger people, and I'm not sure if at the concerts you're going to, whether it's younger people or whether it's an older crowd. But I was curious whether you're noticing any difference between advocating when it's a younger crowd or when it's an older crowd, or whether you don't notice any difference.
That's a good question. I have to be completely honest with you. Sometimes it's easier with an older crowd because I think
Hmm.
that young people, they're they are focused on a lot of different social causes right now. Young people are active in protesting and posting things and stuff. So I do think that sometimes when I talk to them, animals are at the bottom of their list. And sometimes they're like,
Mm.
okay, well, we have all these different things to focus on, you know what I mean? Um, but it really honestly just depends on the person. I've met people of all different kinds of people. Sometimes the person that you think is going to be the meanest person to talk to is actually the nicest. It really just depends.
Mm,
But I do, the one thing I do say, because my job is directed towards younger people, is that you kind of do have to use that motivation of like social causes and stuff. Like young people do care about people and stuff. They do care about, um, they care about people being free. So you kind of have to play into that and be like, listen, like animals, they aren't really different than humans. They are the same ultimately morally. So I have gotten people to understand it more in that way. Um, yeah, like I said, everybody's different, and um, I like talking about both people, but I think that also older people have a different stigma of veganism because
mm.
like they like especially when I say I'm work with PETA, they think of like crazy radical. I think that they were more like prominent back in the day. So
Well, and they were the first ones to do things in a very dramatic way, and they got in quotes, bad reputation. And I think they did really what they needed to do to get attention. We're talking about, I don't know whether it's 30 or 40 years. It's a long time they've been around. But I knew about them before I became vegan, and I fell into that trap of, oh, they're just these extreme people. Now I look at them and think, thank God for what they're doing. So, yeah, yeah. But yeah, that's an interesting response. I mean, when I was thinking about talking to you today, I thought I'm really curious about how this looks from the perspective of somebody who's not 20 yet. Um, and so it's really interesting to hear you say the young people are so committed to some of the things they're involved in, and so it's hard to maybe get their focus. And then with older people, when they hear PETA, they may have a negative reaction until they start talking to you. And I think what you said is really true, which is it's the individual connection. You know, you're having a conversation, and maybe somebody who you looked at and thought, I'm not so sure, ends up being somebody who's receptive.
yeah.
So before we end, anything else that you want people to know about you, about your hopes, about the work you're about to do?
Well, I guess if you're not vegan, go vegan. Um, you know, I would say that if you are vegan, make sure you're just taking care of yourself. I would say go to sanctuaries. That's something I love to do. Just always put the animals first. They don't
Hmm.
have anyone. Um they don't really have a voice. Like whenever you're getting exhausted and stuff, like it's important to take care of yourself, but it's also just, always just think about what the animals have to go through. Because if I was an animal, I'd want people fighting for me, and I'd want people out there protesting, and I'd want people, doing everything they can, being annoying. Sometimes, I get scared. I'm like, I'm being the annoying vegan, but it's like, who cares? Like, you know, the animals want you to be annoying. So, just put the animals
Oh,
first because they deserve it, and
yeah.
they're going through so much right now. And for all,
That's that's a beautiful way of saying it. Put the animals first. I really appreciate it. I appreciate your time. And I'm hoping that maybe while you're out on the road, if you'll periodically send me a few videos and we'll post them. I would love to do that.
absolutely, I'll keep in
So,
touch.
all right. Good luck to you. And thank you again for making time. And thank you for what you're doing. It's
Thank you so
it's
much. Thank you.
really important. All right.